In this video, we're going to take viewer comments. We're going to go ahead and answer the question, why does OG55 talk about Bob Iger and even Bob Chapek so much? Well, we're going to break it down up next. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG55. In this video, we are going to address a viewer comment, a friend of the channel, actually. But we wanted to address this comment because I think it's very, very relevant to what we do here in OG55 and the conversations lately. So, but before we get into all that, my good friend, Vash Guy, host of Freshly Squeezed, Dr. Dre, welcome back, brother.
Hey, happy to be back. Happy to have a chance for the doctor to operate, because this topic right here is a very, very juicy one. I know we've been talking about it a lot, like over extended meets on here, phone calls, all that kind of stuff, and also for what the viewers actually hear and listen to themselves. This is a very juicy topic. We've wanted to break this down for a little while now, and I cannot wait to get into it. But before that, if you want to interact with me, you can go ahead and do so right at VashSky, right down there, just like it's spelled. Just type that into Twitter. Should pop up just fine. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. There you go.
There we go. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to bring up the viewer comment. And this comes from a friend of the channel and actually a contributor. Yes. Sean, a.k.a. Ranking the Mouse, has actually been on the channel a few times now, and he is definitely a friend of the channel. So I want to make that very clear. But we're going to go over his comment here and actually another comment. There's two comments, actually, but they're like kind of related. The first one here is, not going to lie, it's impressive how y'all find a way to critique Iger in every single video. I used to be annoyed, but now I'm impressed. Okay. So
yep.
Here's the thing. Let's start off with this comment right here. Here's the thing, Sean, is that the reason why we bring up Iger and we critique him so much, like you said, in almost every single video, is because a lot of the stuff that the Walt Disney Company is having to deal with right now is directly because of Bob Iger's decisions when he ran the Walt Disney Company. You look at something like Reedy Creek, a very politically driven, situation that Chapek had to deal with. A lot of that, 99% of that was because of Bob Iger setting the tone for the Walt Disney Company for all those years, getting real political with the company. And and because of that, it got to be almost like expected that Disney would kind of dive into this political arena, and it got Chapek in a lot of trouble because he didn't want to do it.
Correct.
And that's just one example, but like that's kind of what we're dealing with here, Sean, is that a lot of the stuff is still residual stuff from his era, and that's why we're continuously bringing it up. But Dre, if you want to go ahead and elaborate and kind of.
Yeah, I think it's really important to elaborate on this point because it's look, listen, it's been a rocky ride for the Disney Company, and unfortunately, that's thanks in no small part to Bob Iger himself. Now, I understand 2020 was an awful year and all that kind of stuff, which it would have been nice for Bob Iger to stick around for a little bit and help with that, but well. He saw the writing on the wall. He saw that Shanghai Disneyland was shutting down, that thing was, going over stateside, and, well, he decided to pin himself to his golden parachute and bail before actually dealing with it. But anyway, besides that point, small little point there.
Actually, great. And not to interrupt you, but that's a fantastic point because Iger renewed his contract for far less reasons before.
Yes.
But for this really like potentially company sinking situation that was the pandemic, he bailed. That yes. Okay, that he leaves. But he made excuse after excuse, far lesser justifications in the past to renew his contract. But the one thing that could actually take the company down, see ya. Here you go, Chapek. So
see ya, he's gone.
Yeah, and
It does say a lot, and that's exactly what happened there. Especially, and this was especially egregious after just after the $70 billion acquisition of 20th Century Fox, $71.3 billion to be exact. And obviously there was a bidding war there, but Iger, well, he just couldn't let it go. He just couldn't let 20th Century Fox go. And we'll go over as to why that may have been.
Yes.
I want to kind of set the stage for that. But, I mean... Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and do that right now because I'm kind of all over the place. Let me go. Let me take people through a kind of storytelling narrative here. Go ahead and share my screen one more time. I'm sorry. And you'll see right here you have NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and then CEO of the company, Bob Iger, right? We've all seen this photo at NBA Experience. Now, here's the really, really interesting, weird thing about this. To date, I've really never seen Bob Iger at Walt Disney World opening anything unless there was a reason attached to it or a high-profile person with him, okay? For example, the opening of Star Tours 2, right? The Star Tours The Adventures Continue over there at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Who is he on the stage with? Well, it's George Lucas. And what is the deal that they pen right after that whole meeting? Well, it's for the acquisition of Lucasfilm for $4 billion. Okay, that came directly from those series of events right there that took place. And right here, what's the ulterior motive for Bob Iger? Because to me, there always is one. Because he doesn't attend anything out in Walt Disney World, ever, unless there's some ulterior motive. Well, you might suggest, well, hey, look, this is, this is deepening the relationship between NBA and the Disney company, right? I guess they have some joint partnership with them on ESPN. They're just kind of furthering that they're deepening that relationship with this addition to Walt Disney World, which everybody knew and everybody thought this was the most bizarre thing ever. Now think about it. This is Disney Quest. It's a huge space that was supposed to be taken up by this, and this thing doesn't last. A couple of months. Obviously, 2020 kind of sunk it, never reopened, and now we're getting something else. But why did this take place in the first place? Well, ulterior motive Bob Iger. Oh, look at that. Oh, so maybe, the whole thing with the bubble, and providing a place for the NBA playoffs and so forth to actually take place with the grand flow and everything like that, which, by the way, I know some people who weren't particularly thrilled about that whole prospect. And the NBA experience, maybe there was some ulterior motive going on here. Maybe there was some personal investment that Bob Iger had that he was using company resources to fulfill. And we know that he thinks of those company resources as his own because he said as much to the NFL owners when they were attempting to figure out a new location for the then St. Louis, now LA Rams Stadium in LA, right? This was the big move. They were taking the St. Louis Rams from their previous place and their previous facility, which I got to be honest, that was a joke. That was laughable. That was a bad place. I understand why Kroenke wanted to do that, right? Took him over to LA, and Bob Iger was commissioned to provide for some argument for the what they were calling the Carson site, right? Kroenke wanted the Inglewood site. It's the one we eventually went to, but while he was giving his pitch for the Carson site in front of all these NFL owners, all these billionaires, he said this. On behalf of Carson, Iger went on next. He tried to, quote, break the ice, he says now, with a joke about how in his 42 years at ABC and Disney, he had paid more money to the NFL than anyone else. The quip was met with blank stares, and for about 20 minutes, Iger spoke with a slideshow behind him that ended with another prepared line, a spin-off of the famous commercial of the Super Bowl MVP shouting, quote, I'm going to Disney World. He says, I hope I'm going to the NFL, in Carson, obviously. And I love Jerry Jones. like, okay, well, obviously I have problems with Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys owner. But he said this afterwards. He said, after Iger left the ballroom and returned to his suite, Jones said, he paid us. Last time I checked, that money is coming from Disney shareholders, not him. That's what happens, Bob Iger, when you're a millionaire and you're in the room with multi-billionaires, okay? You get shown up. Look, that brings us to the $70 billion acquisition deal, and how that may have been motivated by his own personal interests as well. As you astutely pointed out, OG, both on the phone, I think on the show many, many times, you've said, hey, he couldn't let that deal go because he couldn't have a loss on his record right before he actually checked out. And that is 100% correct. When Comcast came in and upped the bid from their original, I think it was in the 30s or in the 40s of billions of dollars, right. Then Comcast actually stepped in, upped it. He just couldn't let it go. And he was already overpaying before because, I don't know what's going on with him and Rupert Murdoch, but whatever. He's now, he was now willing to pay over $71 billion for 20th Century Fox. And what has the outcome been of that? That's a whole nother story. It hasn't been leveraged properly. But $40 billion of that was in cash, was in straight up debt added to the company that they're going to have to pay back with, by the way, rising interest rates. That's a whole nother story. They're going to have to now pay that back. And what do you think that does for cash flow for the entire company? What do you think we would have gotten from the Parks division for $40 billion? Just think about that for a second. And to put it in perspective, another Iger deal that he did with the nation of China, which has its own kind of whole thing attached to it, right? For Shanghai Disneyland, which, by the way, just reopened after being shut down, open again, shut down, open again. I can't figure out which, if it's going to stay open this week, but we'll see.
We'll see. That's
another drag on the company, but it's a whole nother story, right? For Shanghai Disneyland, the costs that they've admitted to are about $5 to $6 billion. Really, it's about $8 billion, but let's just take the $8 billion figure. Think about how much Shanghai Disneyland encompasses. And now apply that to the entire Parks division in the form of $40 billion. That's how much we were robbed from Bob Iger because of this stupid Fox deal that has put the entire company, its revenue, its cash flow, its debt in jeopardy. And if they don't pay that debt off, by the way, if they don't make that payment, they could be looking at bankruptcy, to be honest with you. So what does that do with cash flow?
Right.
You've got rising interests, right? And they still have to pay off that principal. They had huge cash flow problems, as we know, during the events of 2020 during the pandemic. And now you have Chapek here looking to pick up the pieces. And yeah, obviously he's going to want to monetize the revenue the generators for the company at a time when they can't generate revenue anywhere else. It's completely 100% obvious. And this right here is why we keep talking about Bob Iger. Because he's put this company in a harmful financial position. He's used company assets for his own purposes. And that brings us to the political problem within Disney, right? He wasn't just using company assets, but he was also using this kind of sweeping policy position throughout the Disney company to enrich himself and set himself up for a presidential run or a run in politics, which he might still do, by the way. Apparently, he's on the phone with Barack Obama right now talking about, what post-Disney life will be like. What do you think that conversation's about? And this... I was just in a conversation on Twitter with a bunch of people who are kind of arguing over the merits of Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and Lightyear, and kind of all these things, right? Because I kind of put out a tweet saying that, hey, Buzz Lightyear was dropped from 2,000 theaters. It's not very good right there, on its fourth week. Not good at all. But every single studio putting out pictures right now has films performing in 2022 over expectations, less Disney. Disney's the only one that doesn't have a major box office performer that's overperformed where it's supposed to be. Every single one of them has underperformed. And that's thanks in no small part to Bob Iger and his incessant, compulsion to drive the company into a more political direction. They pushed a lot of people away here. And it's had detrimental consequences for the entire company. And that's why we keep talking about him, because we're still living with the ripple effects from his leadership today.
100%, right? 100%. And it's like, even if you're a progressive, you can't deny the fact that we live in a very divided country. So when Disney goes to the left, when Disney goes progressive, you're essentially leaving out 50% of the country. Now, on the flip end, if Disney decided to go full conservative, they would also be leaving out 50% of the country. That's why it's not a good idea to get fucking involved at all and just make content. And that's the problem. But see, Bob Iger, the thing with Bob Iger is that he started to kind of plant these political seeds at Disney because, like Dre said, he wanted to run for president. Just like he was planting the NBA seeds with the NBA experience and the bubble and all that stuff because he wanted to buy an NBA team, right? It's all the same garbage. It's leveraging Disney and leveraging Disney's future to kind of like
enrich himself.
To enrich himself and his future endeavors. And I used to be a huge Bob Iger fan. I got his fucking book, dude. You know, I used to love Bob Iger, but the more I see and the more I hear as further away we get from that era, the less I like. I'll be completely honest with you. Now, as a person, he's probably a great guy. I have nothing against the guy. But in terms of running Disney, while he did a lot of good things for Disney, there's no doubt about it, there are a lot of things like the politics, the overpaying for Fox because of ego, basically,
right.
And all this other stuff that is really, really, really detrimental to the Disney company. And I'm sorry, I have more allegiance to the Walt Disney Company because I love this company and the history and the legacy that Walt Disney set than I do for Bob Iger. You know, Bob Iger might be a smart businessman, but if he's going to hurt the thing that I love so dearly, I can't support him. I just can't. And that's why we continue to talk about him because, like Dre said, it lingers. It didn't go away when Iger left. The $70 billion Fox debt is going to be there for a long fucking time. You know, the political stuff, even if Chapek is successful, will take probably a decade to completely undo. This is a huge mess. All the stuff he, like you said, Dre, with China and all that stuff, that mess over there, that's another thing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot there that he kind of, the seeds that he planted that are now coming home to roost. And Sean, that's why we talk about it so much, you know. And on this channel, you know, this is the stuff we talk about because we talk about the company, the corporate end of it, the business end of it. And we also talk about a lot about like attractions and speculations and what have you. So that's look, Iger, like it or not, is in the center of all that corporate stuff still, and the future of the company, the health of the company. So that's kind of where we're at. So that it's crazy. You can't leave him out of the conversation. He's too big right now, even as somebody who is an ex-CEO.
Yes. And there's speculation, and we've reported on here before that his influence is still ever wide-reaching at the company. I've heard stories where executives or people working at Disney right now, when they don't like what Bob Chapek's doing, they run to Daddy Iger, you know, and they get in touch with him and his media contacts, and they put out a story in, I don't know, Deadline or The Hollywood Reporter or whatever like that, right? I mean, and it goes beyond. I mean, there's a mixture of bad business decisions, you know, whether it be because of his own ego or because of just, you know, let's be honest, he's not the greatest manager on earth. For example, right? I'll show you this. Anybody remember this? Go ahead and share my screen there, OG. Oh, the buck stops with Daddy Iger when it comes to Star Wars, right? And we still have not seen a Star Wars movie hit production since 2019, since the release of Rise of Skywalker, right? And he even says, he's like, hey, the buck stops here when it comes to Star Wars content, right? Look, you know, the Lucasfilm acquisition, I think he believed, and I've talked with you about this before, OG, but I believe he believed that it was going to be a turnkey operation. That, you know, whatever processes they put in place for Pixar or Marvel could be just, you know, attributed to Lucasfilm itself. And Lucasfilm was a completely different animal at that point in time. They hadn't released a major film in 10 years at that point, right? They had just done some stuff in TV, some stuff in video games and all that kind of stuff, but they weren't at all the major studios with a production pipeline in place like Pixar and Marvel was. And yet Kathleen Kennedy was not completely his fault, obviously. From what I understand, George Lucas selected Kathleen Kennedy to run Lucasfilm, which he honored, but he put a production pipeline in place that really ran out of gas far sooner than it was expected to, and you have to put that on Bob Iger as well. And he talks about it's kind of funny because he talks about Benioff and DB Weiss in here, right? Like, oh yeah, they're gonna get us out of this, and that didn't happen either. Mars Needs Moms. What is it? John Carter. There were a multitude of different issues when it came to Bob Iger, just as a CEO who was running the Disney company. I mean, he didn't really hit it off with live action up until Alan Horn and the Disney animated live action redos,
right.
The live action releases. Listen, you have to credit him for some stuff, right? He saw the vision in taking on a company like Pixar, right? And that brain trust that came along with Pixar, and that he could infuse to other different parts of the company when he himself couldn't exactly make it work before then, right? I think it's more even attributed to that last point to Marvel, right? They didn't really have a live action presence up until the Marvel MCU, and then they were kind of firing on all cylinders at that point. There are problems we're still living with, unfortunately, when it comes to Bob Iger, and I think he just lost his way. Yeah. And that's why I brought up the story with the NBA owners, because he believed that it was his company, his money, and that whatever the company did was a reflection on him, which is why he drove it in such a political direction, because he was thinking about a presidential run. And that has really led to Bob Chapek being in a position to pick up the pieces and to deal with all this. And now we hear talks that, Bob Chapek and Kareem Daniel are out there at, in Paris attempting to figure out how to get themselves out of some of the traps that Bob Iger has laid down before exiting the company. So we're still going to be talking about him, unfortunately. And to be honest, it's not all, Bob Chapek's fault when it comes to the lack of investment in the parks and so forth, right? I mean, in 2019, I remember reading a story about how Bob Chapek, with the approval of Bob Iger, was spending about $25 billion on the Parks and Resorts division. I mean, it was a huge mass lump sum of money. But with the acquisition of Fox and the pandemic and their debt and all that kind of stuff, now that's all got to be scaled back. It's frustrating.
It is frustrating. It is frustrating. And you brought up, like the Fox thing. Even on, obviously it's been a huge hit for Disney financially, but even on the PR end of things for Disney, the company has taken a major hit. I've noticed even before Bob Chapek, before Bald Man Bad became CEO, the narrative in on social media and amongst the fan circles was starting to really go downhill for Disney once they acquired Fox. There was a lot more of the film community people and film Twitter and what have you, really going after Disney. This was when Disney was going after Fox because they were getting too big. And that's another seed that Iger planted, right? Because it was one more thing, Disney looks like this kind of monopoly driven sort of company now, because now they're buying one of the last major studios in the industry. And then he left. He just, he bones out, and because of the pandemic, and now Chapek's left to deal with it. And now Chapek does not have the charisma and the reach within the Hollywood industry to sort of calm those waters. So it just completely went to shit. Okay? Yeah. Because before, at least when Disney's reputation was going downhill, when Iger was buying Fox and swallowing up all these studios, Iger could kind of calm those waters, because he everyone in Hollywood loves the guy. Well, once Chapek got in there, no one in Hollywood liked Bob Chapek, so then it just completely turned on its head. But that was one other thing. The monopoly talks, the Disney's getting too big talks, the reputation hits started around that Fox era when Iger was courting Murdoch to buy the company. So
and who did Bob Iger bring in with that Fox deal? Well, Peter Rice. And how does the Peter Rice story play into all of this? Well, there's some speculation that he was working with Peter Rice in order to subvert what Chapek wanted to actually do with the company, to subvert his plans for taking Disney in a more moderate direction. They didn't like that. They attempted to usurp him and really kind of subvert what he was attempting to do right there with obviously the outlay, the outcry from the HB 1557 deal and beyond. And now Peter Rice is no longer with the company because of that. It all comes back to Iger when you really think about it. Even the lack of box office success, especially at Pixar, but with other studios, right? I attribute a lot of that to how Lasseter was treated and how he was ousted from the company, taking a lot of talent with him, absorbing new talent that was coming up in the industry, and really leaving a hole there for both Disney Animation and Pixar. Now, Bob Iger could have stopped that. Bob Iger could have defended John Lasseter at a time that he really needed defending the most. All the attacks seemingly have gone away from John Lasseter as soon as he left the company. So what does that tell you? But Iger could have. His what is it, cult of personality and so forth, his, how everybody loves him in Hollywood, as you astutely point out, OG, he could have done something about it. But maybe because there were other things at play there, maybe because, Bob Iger had his own political interests, maybe after Disney, he didn't.
Right.
And now Skydance might be real competition in the animation game that didn't exist previously exist before. So now we're creating new competitors as well. Thanks, Iger.
Right. Yeah. And so where's the outrage that Lasseter works at Skydance? With the women at Skydance don't matter as much as the women at Disney? I don't understand that. Like, what did they accomplish? Okay, he got fired from Disney, but now he's working with a bunch of people at Skydance. Right. Where's all the activists out there that were screaming about firing Lasseter when he worked at Disney? Why aren't they there screaming that for Skydance to fire Lasseter? Where are they? It's been fucking crickets.
Yeah, crickets. And Iger could have helped out in that process. I mean, he could have, he's wishing everybody else kudos for the release of Miss Marvel and all this kind of stuff, right? He could have, defended John Lasseter even further than he did. Or, hey, maybe wish him best of luck with the new Skydance movie Look that's coming out, right? That John Lasseter's now a part of. Could have done any of that, but hasn't. So he's not even loyal. It's not even... and I was just going over this, interestingly enough, with Disney Family Man 23 last night after the show that we filmed with his lovely family, which you should all check out, by the way, as viewers on this show, for sure. But what would have happened if Steve Jobs hadn't died? And maybe that, I don't know, maybe that affected Iger more than maybe we attribute. Because it definitely felt like something changed there, that was some kind of inflection point. And maybe if Steve Jobs was there, maybe he could have defended John Lasseter, and maybe Iger could have had the courage to do so as well. But it's there are reverberations of Iger's actions, even early on into his run as CEO, that we're going to still be dealing with, and like you said, OG, that we're still going to be dealing with for like a decade or more. Hey, if you guys on watching this show, if you're disappointed in the output from something like D23 Expo, right, in terms of new enhancements and projects for the parks or something like that, if you're not quite if you're quite disappointed with the new films that are coming out right now, you have one person to thank, and it's not Chapek, interestingly enough.
No, these creative endeavors, whether it be an attraction at a park, whether it be a new land, whether it be a movie, animated film, take years to develop. Just because Chapek is currently the CEO and the movie gets released when Chapek is the CEO doesn't mean that Chapek had much to do with it. We're just now starting to see the effects of Disney Animation and Pixar not having Lasseter. Lasseter left the company in 2018, and we're just now starting to see films that don't have Lasseter's touch there. It took like 4 years to get there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It takes a long time for this stuff, because these executives they put their fingerprints on this stuff in the production process, and by the time they're released, it's years after the fact.
100%.
So yeah, if you don't like Multiverse of Madness, you think the CGI is crap, you don't like Thor 4, those are residual Iger things. That has nothing to do with Bob Chapek. Very little to do with Chapek. Very, very little.
100%. 100%. I mean, Chapek still hasn't even had a chance to really make his mark on the company. I mean, he's still, he was constrained by Bob Iger even being in the building. And then when he was gone, he had to deal with Peter Rice and all his BS. And now that he's been, extended in terms of his contract, now he can actually start to start to put in place some of his plans that he's had for the company all along. But again, it's taken us 2.5 years to get here, and it's been a bumpy ride, as we have astutely pointed out on this show. It's tough. It's tough. But from what I understand, there are some changes afoot. Like I said, apparently Kareem Daniel and Bob Chapek are coming up with a plan to kind of set a new tone for the company, take it into a less political direction, right? Maybe into a more neutral direction, and really start to overcome some of these issues that Bob Iger has unfortunately saddled with the company ever since his departure and before. Well,
and here's the thing about if Chapek or anyone on his team by any chance is watching this video, look at Universal. Look at Universal, because that's the closest thing to Disney, right? I would consider Universal a politically neutral company. They don't really dive too much into these waters. They really don't. They didn't touch the Florida bill. They were like, we're not touching that shit, right?
Even though they donated a lot of money towards Floridian politicians themselves. Didn't touch it.
They donated even more money than Disney did, from what I understand. And so they're surviving just fine.
Yes, they are.
I mean, the parks are doing great. The films are doing great. So Disney, Chapek, Kareem, financially, you'll be fine. Get out of fucking politics and you'll be fine. Just look at Universal as an example. They're doing fine. They're not out there preaching about politics and repealing bills and all this other nonsense. Right. I mean, they're staying out of it and their company is thriving. Disney can be the same way. And from what I understand, Zaslav of Warner Brothers wants to do the same thing. He's said many times now he wants CNN to get out of the activism business and more about just reporting the news.
Yes.
So it's out there. It's out there. Disney can do the same, and they absolutely should. But it's going to take a long time because, Sean, look, your boy Iger, he tied this knot, and now Chapek has to untie that knot, and it didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to happen overnight undoing it.
Oh, absolutely. And unlike Warner Brothers Discovery or Comcast, they didn't have a previous CEO who left them in a fashion where you have a whole bunch of politically active members kind of taking the company into their own directions. He didn't leave them with a Reimagine Tomorrow initiative that has its tendrils in every single facet of the company, who has, as we learned in the events of the HB 1557, who became a very kind of disruptive force for Chapek. It's been they're Zaslav and Comcast over there. I think they're getting their house, either it has been in order or they're getting it back in order, right? And they're going in this direction. And like you said, OG, they're completely fine. Nobody's trying to bust down their doors for not being progressive enough or being, I don't know, insensitive and to some community out there or whatever. They're going forward now with their projects, politically uninhibited, right? And they're okay. So I look at what they might be doing, Kareem Daniel and Chapek, what they might be doing in Paris and so forth, and what the outline for the next 10 years for the company might look like. And I do applaud their efforts. But it's not going to be easy, and it's going to take, like you said, years to untangle.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And even if you completely disregard everything we talked about today, okay, you want to disregard the NBA, you want to disregard this, you want to disregard that. Okay, fine. The very the action of basically Bob Iger, kind of like, okay, I'm done. Right, but right when the pandemic hit, and said, okay, Chapek, now your turn. Go ahead, you deal with it. That act alone, ignoring everything else, shows you where Iger's head is at. It's with Bob Iger and his own legacy. Because I could tell you right now, if I was ever the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, I would never do that because I care too much about this company. I would never just basically walk out the door and say, you deal with it, because it's not that I care about Chapek. I don't care about him as a person, really. I don't have any investment towards Bob Chapek, but he's running the company I love. And if I was CEO of Disney and I was handing the keys over to him, I'd want to make sure he was best equipped. And Iger didn't seem to give a shit, to be quite honest with you. Like I said before, he extended his contract for far lesser reasons in the past. Now, the one thing that could take Disney down on the heels of overpaying for Fox, $70 billion, now looking forward to a massive pandemic, now is the time. That was the time he said, okay, now I'm ready to leave.
Yeah.
What the hell? And that doesn't raise any questions to you guys. Like no red flags. He doesn't care about the company. It's clear, and that frustrates me.
Well, and two more things to add to that point there, OG. When he does kind of step back in, he doesn't step back in and tell Bob Chapek and say, hey, we really got to get down to business. We got to really do all this kind of stuff. No, he almost white knights himself as the hero to the media before even telling Bob Chapek. So
rides right in.
Yep, rides right in, right? Yeah, he's getting accolades in the plot. I'm back, guys. I'm back. Thank you very much. Right? He's getting back in there, and he's like, "Hey, I'm back. I'm going to help you lead this company through this hard time, there, Chapek. Don't you worry. Why don't you go ahead and give me some of those reins right there?" And that's how he approaches coming back to help the company, to the media first, and then. Do you remember that story? I don't know if you remember this, OG. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. But there was a story where Bob Iger sold like half his stock options.
Yep.
It was a couple months ago, right when the stock price was at its highest. And then, interestingly enough, how long was it until the stock price actually dropped? Viewers, why don't you go ahead and look that up. And you tell me, between OG's point here and my own just now, and to your point, OG, if Bob Iger really does care about the company.
Right.
Because maybe he started out caring about the company, but it was all too obvious that at the end there, he was looking out for number one, and it wasn't Disney.
Yeah, 100%, man. And that's unfortunate, because I really did for the longest time believe he cared deeply about the Walt Disney Company. And I defended him a lot in those years. And I'm starting to see more and more come out. And the more I hear and the more I see, the less I like, unfortunately. And I hope Chapek can right the ship and get things back on course and get Disney back to what it's supposed to do, and just make good content instead of trying to cure every ill in the world. That's not Disney's job. I know that's not a popular thing to say, but it's just not. That Disney isn't here to ensure that there's world peace and unity and harmony between everybody. That's not Disney's job. Disney's job is to create a great product for people to enjoy. And that's, at the bottom line, that's what they're there for. It's okay for them to do good things, but at the end of the day, though, their core mission is to make great content and not to dive into these political pet projects and all this other nonsense, So
yeah.
It's upsetting, but we'll see. I think Chapek is committed to that, and I think that we'll start to see at least some improvement on that in the next year or two, and so on.
I hope you're right. I mean, it's tough right now. Even with I was getting into a discussion with some people about both Lightyear. And it's just, oh man, that's tough right there. That is a tough gap. But even like Thor: Love and Thunder, right? Which everybody's like, oh yeah, it's doing gangbusters right now. God, what are you talking about? It's gonna make it's gonna make so much money. It's ridiculous. And I had to, carefully kind of take them through. Okay, well that's not quite what the numbers say. Here's the breakdown here and everything like that. And it's clear from my analysis that, I mean, it's just kind of like breaking even, Thor: Love and Thunder.
Well, and here's the thing, and I was watching John Campea this morning, which I'm a huge fan of Campea. I don't always agree with him, but I'm a huge fan of his nonetheless, you know? And he was talking about how the opening weekend was a roaring success because each Thor movie made more than the last one. That's true. That's very, very true, Campea. But here's the issue. Ragnarok, as much as I hated that movie, Ragnarok was very much beloved. So the opening weekend for Love and Thunder is really riding Ragnarok's coattails.
Yeah.
A lot of the people going to see this one are going because they were hyped and they loved Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's weekend 2 going to look like when people leave that theater and it's like 2 hours of like Robot Chicken like comedy, and it's not what they expected.
Right.
I don't think weekend 2 is going to be kind to Love and Thunder at all.
Well, and to be more precise, OG, John Campea, who I think knows this, is leaving out the fact that in Thor: Love and Thunder, the average ticket price is nowhere near as much as it is now. I believe the average ticket price when Thor Ragnarok actually came out was anywhere between maybe $8 to $12, somewhere around there. I mean, now that theaters have moved to a variable pricing model that takes into account date of release, auditorium size, film, all that kind of stuff, the average ticket price for Thor: Love and Thunder is anywhere between $13, $15. In IMAX, I was just looking it up, it was $17. This is the average ticket price is if you don't factor inflation if you don't factor inflation in the total box office number, you're being disingenuous at that point, I think.
Right.
And if you look at the amount of people that were actually in a theater to see Love and Thunder, it was 2 million less than Thor Ragnarok. So which one do you think Disney really cares about when you talk about merchandise and, a post-theater success and maybe theme park ties and all that kind of stuff? I mean, it's pulp culture influence that makes these films what they are, especially in the eyes of Disney.
Right, no, 100%. Well, we'll know because Kathleen Kennedy will ultimately cancel Taika Waititi's Star Wars movie because that's what she does every single time.
Yep.
She takes these directors on when they're hot. Colin Trevorrow, Patty Jenkins, the Game of Thrones guys. And then the minute they have a bad movie
Fantastic
or a bad
guys.
season or anything like that, then Kathleen Kennedy will dump them. So we'll know what Disney really feels when Kathleen Kennedy ends up dumping Taika Waititi.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. This is Kathleen Kennedy's MO. So I do agree with you, OG. That'll be really fun to watch.
Yeah, it's wild. But Dr. Dre, thank you so much for coming on today, brother. I do appreciate it. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Hey, best place to find me is going to be at Vashguy on Twitter. It's right down there. Go ahead and plug that in. A lot of discussion this morning. I don't know what happens. You attribute something to a meme, and everybody gets. Yeah, exactly. For all your robust discussion, as
Christine Waistlines McCarthy
would say. All your robust discussion, right? And, if you want to see me, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice and news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Let's see, right there. There you go.
Perfect.
It's going to be... It's an interesting time. It's an interesting time, and I look forward to having more conversations on here. So, viewers, if you want to see more here, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Like this video and hey, share it with your friends if you think we're on board or even if we're not. We'd love to read the comments and see people who agree and people who disagree. So please and thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. We welcome all opinions, whether you agree or disagree. We love ranking the mouse. We love Sean, but on this particular, I think on a lot of the Iger issues, we disagree with Sean, and that's fine. He's still family here. We still love him. But, at the end of the day, we disagree. It's all good. So if you disagree, comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. If you agree, we also love to hear from you. Comment down below. We do content on Disney corporate, the parks, the film streaming end of it all the time. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.